Welcome to episode 93 of Real Health Radio. You can find the links talked about as part of this episode in the show notes, which is www.7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/93.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hi boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Real Health Radio. Today it's another guest interview and I'm sitting down with Pip Black. So Pip, alongside Joan Murphy, is the co-founder of Frame. As a child and in her early 20s, she played top-level sport before going on to study business management. In 2008, she set up Frame with the goal of making fitness fun, sociable, and flexible. And since then, the business has grown to many locations around the UK. And Pip's been featured in The Guardian, in BBC News, Sunday Times Style, and has received a Mary Claire Women at the Top Accolade. So before this interview, I was trying to think back to when I first met Pip. And I think it was sometime in 2012, so maybe in the early part of the year, so 5 years ago. And I actually went to a New Year's Eve party at a friend's place, and one of my friends mentioned Pip and said that she'd be someone I should speak to. So he sent a CC email to both of us, and then we met up. And I think it was in All Press in Red Church Street for anyone who is a Londoner. Really amazing coffee. So we met up, we chatted for ages, and we just got on really well, and things went from there. And so for the last 5 years, I've written for Frame's blog, and my content has probably been a little bit more sporadic recently, and sometimes it can be a couple of months without me putting out anything, but I do regularly write articles that appear on Frame's blog. I've done talks for Frame, I've done free consults for a lot of their attendees, and I've had many Framers become clients of mine. So actual truth be told, it was probably or largely a result of Frame in the early years that I was able to then make the transition to have nutrition be my solo gig and not needing any other supplementary income. So they were a really great resource for me for clients, and they still are today. So it was lovely to be able to sit down and chat with Pip about the rise of Frame. So we talk about Pip's background playing sport. We talk about Frame's beginnings in Shoreditch and how this expanded to multiple sites around London and now in other places in the UK. We talk about the philosophy around Frame and what they're trying to do. So exercise should be something that is fun, where you enjoy doing it rather than something you suffer through with some supposed end goal. And this is really at the core of what Frame's about. And we also chat about motherhood, which is Pip and Joan's newest project, helping women understand what exercise they can be doing while they're pregnant. So there's a lot that we cover, and I've known Pip for a really long time, so it was a very easy and laid-back chat. So without any further preamble, this is my conversation with Pip Black. Hey Pip, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi Chris, no worries. Looking forward to chatting.
So you are the co-founder of Frame, which you started with Joan Murphy, and I'm sure lots of my listeners know of Frame and have been to classes there, but for those who don't know about the company, you're able to describe it just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Joan and I set Frame up back in 2008 based on the sort of simple mantra that getting fit shouldn't be a chore. And the key thing behind why we created Frame was that we were actually personally looking for somewhere where we could exercise that was fun and engaging, flexible, and had no commitments. Because back then, it was still about the traditional gym. So for us, it was about creating somewhere where we could go with our friends, have a good time, and also feel great afterwards. So now we're at the stage where we've got 4 studios in London, and we offer over 800 classes a week, and those sort of range from yoga, reformer Pilates, dance, fitness, and then bar classes too.
Okay. So look, there's a lot about Frame's history I would love to dig into, but before that, I'd like to just chat a little bit more about you. So my assumption is if you're opening a chain of gyms, or that's where you've got to at this stage, you had like a history of sport or being sporty as a child?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have always sort of moved my body since I was a very young child. I played top level sport throughout my childhood and university years, concentrating mainly on hockey, representing my country at a schoolgirl level. But I also played tennis, netball, quite high level of athletics as well. I used to run 800 for my sins and design discus, smallest discus thrower ever. So my mum and dad have always been massively into being active. So my dad was a top sort of badminton squash player, so he'd have us out in the garden, playing badminton age 4. And then I used to horse ride and do a lot of dancing as well. So sometimes I look back and I wish that I hadn't had to do quite so much. But actually, in the long term, there's been so many benefits of, not just through physically, but actually sort of mentally, and also preparing yourself to cope with the demands of life generally and running a business. You learn a lot of skills through team sport and sort of learning about commitment and showing up and working as a team, for example, as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you mentioned about your parents there. Do you have brothers and sisters? Were they also quite sporty as well, if you did?
Yeah. So I've got an older sister, and she was also pretty sporty. She was definitely more into sport. So, she could tell you every winner of Wimbledon since probably the beginning. Okay. So she was definitely more into that kind of side of it and watching and supporting. But yeah, she's still really active now, and she has just had a child and is already, lifting her nice heavy weights and going running with the running buggy, 6 months after. So yeah, we're all pretty into our health and fitness, but I think we're also quite, balanced as a family. We love our wine, we love good food.
Yeah.
So it's quite a nice sort of way to approach it, I think, and that's hopefully as well through Frame. And Joan, my business partner, that's sort of how her and her family are too. So it all we come from similar backgrounds.
And you mentioned about playing for your country at school level. Was there a desire to go and be an Olympic hopeful, or was there a realization that wasn't going to happen, or how did that pan out?
I think it comes down to the fact that it never was my life, and I was never kind of at the stage where I wanted to if you want to play at that level, you have to commit everything to being there. I'm not saying that I definitely would have got there anyway. I'm sure I probably wouldn't. But I even when I was sort of 18, I was still going out with my friends on a Friday night before a big game on a Saturday, because those things were important to me too. So yeah, I've never been the person that wants to do one thing and put everything into it. And I think that kind of comes across with Frame as well, is that we're not into one type of exercise. We're into doing different things depending on your mood that day and how your body feels.
Yeah, definitely. And so you mentioned then still playing sport when you went off to college or university. So what did you originally study when you did that?
So I studied business. So I did a course in Bath at Bath University, which we DBA, which apparently meant do bugger all, but actually I think we all worked pretty bloody hard. And as part of that course, we had 2 6-month internships, and I did my first one at PwC in London, where I got paid an awful lot of money, but was bored to death. And then I did my second one actually out in Australia. So I worked at the Australian Institute of Sport, and looked at sort of in the PR marketing team there, and looked after the guys from Australia who were going over to the Athens Olympics. So money terrible, but the experience and kind of starting to understand the business side of sport and fitness was incredible.
And that would have, if I'm doing the age math correctly, would have been around about 2002, 2003, somewhere in that ballpark?
2004. No. Yeah, 2004 was Athens. So yeah.
Yeah, just because I know, so I'm originally from Sydney, and when I was living there at that stage, obviously we had the Olympics in 2000, and there's just so much funding that then went into sport leading up to that, and then it drops off the same way as in the UK. That has happened. There's been just tremendous amounts of funding leading up to the Olympics, and now over the next 5 to 8 years, you'll see the British team not do so well just because there isn't the finances that was there. But if you were out there at that stage, you probably were still in a nice honeymoon phase where there was still money going into Australian sport.
Oh, there was definitely money going into sport, but I think what really struck me actually was how, because I had worked in like big corporate companies and done sort of work at places like Mars and stuff as well, and just how different and almost still grassroots top level sport still was, even at that like kind of Olympic level. So in terms of, you know, the marketing kind of budgets and stuff were minimal, and it was still very much like a kind of community thing of getting, you know, local businesses to donate money at sort of charity events and these kinds of activities, rather than say when you're used to watching, I don't know, for me, I'm a massive Arsenal fan, so seeing the kind of money that goes into advertising the Premier League, I mean, it was significantly different.
Yes, definitely. So Joan, how did you guys meet?
We met through friends. So after I came back to London and graduated, I travelled for a year around the world, and then I started working at a place called Octagon, which is a sports marketing agency. And I sort of, I think, again, based on the fact that the opportunities, I'm quite creative and quite a brand advocate, and sort of in sport, that wasn't really an option. It was still quite backwards. So I ended up in digital advertising, where everything was very forward thinking and new and exciting, which really suited me. And I lived with lots of Aussies and Kiwis. So there was about, I think, like 22 of them that all lived in one house together somehow. And then they decided that they're a bit old for that and no one wanted to sleep on the floor anymore. So they sort of split off into like about 4 or 5 houses, but on the same road. And I moved in as a token Brit into one of those houses. And it was amazing at the time, actually, to see people, because coming from sort of my background and then going to university, and then everyone from my course had kind of gone off into corporate jobs and had quite a similar life, and everyone sort of went to the gym, and then you went out on a Friday and got trashed, and it was kind of very similar, and it was really refreshing to live with a group of people who had come over and had 2 years or more, and they were going to make the most out of being in London and Europe. And so we started to just do so many things that you kind of just didn't do if you were from this country. So, you know, every kind of holiday or long weekend we were away doing something, and one of those was we went down to Cornwall and went surfing Easter 2007, and that's where I met Joan. So we had a really funny sort of initial meeting, because she'd been there most of the day and I was a bit late. So I sort of walked into the room and she stood up and knocked the TV off the stand straight away. and I was like, wow, this person's special. And then, you know, a beautiful friendship grew from that.
Nice. And so then how did the germ of an idea for Frame come to be? So you met her in the 2007. I think you said you started in 2008. So yeah, how did that process happen?
So basically Joan and I, even that weekend, we just clicked literally straight away. And I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that we were both very, we wanted to be involved in everything. So like we were the, you know, 2 girls that were out in the water surfing all day. We were the ones that were up latest, still dancing on the dance floor at 4 a.m. Like, and we were like, well, like, I was like, oh, there's somebody else who's similar to me, a bit bonkers. And then found out that she had a really similar background. Like Joan's played pretty much every sport for New Zealand, and also is really into just having fun and a good time. And she's, you know, she was working in advertising too. And we sort of started like kind of hanging out and looking for somewhere where we could go and, you know, exercise in a way that, because we were both sort of got to that stage, I think, where we'd partied quite hard for maybe a year or two. Yeah. And we're starting to miss the feeling that we used to have when exercise had been a really regular part of our lives. Yeah. And it wasn't that we wanted to play that top level sport again, because it just doesn't really fit in that well with a London lifestyle. And we didn't necessarily want to be committing to training all the time. Yeah. But we did want to get the benefits of doing something that we enjoyed, where it wasn't just that you were doing it because you felt guilty because you'd eaten too much or drunk too much the night before. Go and stand on a treadmill and look at a wall, basically. So, which was kind of what was going on back then. So we kind of like would meet up on our bikes, because we were, again, probably the only two people in London that rode our bikes back in those days, after work, and go and try and find places to do stuff. And do you know what? Just like nothing really existed. There was a few very, very yoga studios, which were quite intimidating. There was Bikram had just sort of arrived, and so we obviously did the 30-day trial, which I think most people have done. But then after that, it becomes very expensive, and also you have to have 2 hours to do it, really, and it gets a bit boring to do the same thing every time. And then there was a couple of Pilates studios, but again, they were like 28 quid a class, and we were working in advertising, age 23, 24. So we didn't really have that kind of cash. So I guess that, and the fact that because we did both come from a sort of advertising sort of quite creative background, but then also like because Joan did a business and finance degree, we both kind of understood this. So we knew that there was a gap in the market, and we knew that this could be done better. Yeah. So it was kind of like a joint thing between the fact that we actually wanted something, and so we were both like, well, let's just create it so we can go. And to this day, my treat on the weekend is to go to class at Frame. Which is a fact. I'm like begging my husband, I go. And then, and then the other side of it was like, actually what is out there isn't great. And this business model that's been around for, decades, where you're trying to make people sign up to a 12-month membership to come to a gym, which they hate, and pray that them come so you can get more members. We were like, this just doesn't make sense in this day and age where, sort of millennials and Gen Y, we're all looking for like, non-committal, flexible options. So kind of put two and two together and came up with the concept of Frame, which grew. I mean, it wasn't meant to be quite as large as it became.
Yeah, sure. And then, so how was it in the beginning? Because I mean, I'm thinking about when I set up my own business and how difficult that is. And I know in the whole scheme of things, I had so little overheads. But for you guys, I imagine you were then having to then rent a large space or buy a large space, so it's not that easy to just get started. So, like, how was that, and what were the worries in terms of the weekly and the monthly expenses?
Oh my God, like so stressful. So basically, so we have property. So we, for people that don't know Frame, we started in Shoreditch. So we at the time had 2 railway arches, which took us a good amount of time to find and then secure. And then we had to build them on a very, very small budget, which was interesting for people who obviously had never done a building project before in their lives, and had no cash to pay somebody else to do it. So one thing that we did was we put together a very in-depth business plan with especially like based on like looking at the market, but also really looking at the finances and cash flow. Something that Joan's dad, who's actually has him and Joan's mum have their own business. So they gave us really great advice at the beginning, which was basically, like cash is king. Like you have to look after your cash flow. You can't spend money if you don't have it. Yeah. And I think that's something which we've seen is that a lot of people go wrong in terms of that, because you obviously want to be able to like have the best, taps and showers and, the highest grade towels and all those things. But you just can't afford to do that until you're making, bringing the money in. Yeah. So looking after cash flow is key. And we scraped. We didn't really pay ourselves for 4 or 5 years, really. And we both learned to teach classes because we couldn't afford to pay other people to do that. But also, I think there was very few people that were already trained out there that would teach a class in the style that we wanted them to teach it. Yeah. There was lots of people out there that were very just sort of gym focused and would maybe do a circuit class, but we wanted things to be very music centric. We wanted people to sort of add a bit more choreography into things, make it a bit more fun, a bit more engaging. So kind of our way of getting around that was to create these types of classes ourselves. So we trained up, became instructors, and delivered a lot of classes. So sort of for those first sort of 3 or 4 years, one of us would be on reception from say 6:30 until 2, whilst the other person taught classes, and then would like switch over after lunch, and then the other person would be on the evening shift. And then somehow in amongst all of that, we'd do all of the like marketing and finance and, you know, operations and all the other stuff. So yeah, it was tough times, but we were both knackered. But, you know, like actually putting in those hours has paid off, and also it means that we understand our business fully sort of inside and out. So then we were able to slowly take ourselves out and make sure that the people that we were hiring to come into those roles, you know, we could coach them so they could do them in the way we'd like them to, but also we'd understand the kind of challenges that they would be facing as well.
Totally. And I think just having that real customer interaction from the first day, and for however many years you did that, I think you said 5 years, you know so much about your business as opposed to just always being the overseer and always being removed and having people doing those roles.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, like we built this community based on the fact that we were talking to our customer every day. And, you know, like I got married about 1.5 years ago, and about 8 of the people at my wedding were friends I'd just made through Frame in those early years. Okay. You know, customers that would come in, and then we all became friends and go on holiday together. And it's an invaluable asset to be able to actually fully understand who your customer is. And we were also lucky in the way that we built a business that was kind of aimed at people like us. Yeah. So I think personally it's much easier to market to a clientele that you totally understand, and we did, through both the fact that that was who we were, but also we had first-hand experience talking to our customers all the time. So, you know, we could flex our business model according to what people actually wanted, because I think that's one thing, and it's actually, I've noticed it more and more, because you see a lot of people now who you want to have, you know, to know everything at the beginning of whatever it's doing, whether it's a project at work or whatever. And Joan and I are very much focused on iterating and building slowly and organically, and kind of, you know, you could spend hours in meetings trying to plan exactly how everything is going to work perfectly, but it's not going to work. So it's better to just kick off with your, like, something that works enough, and then to start taking feedback and learnings from what is working, and sort of flex accordingly. So when we launched Frame, like, I'd say probably over 50% of our class or our revenue was coming from dance classes. And now that's gone sort of much further down. So fitness and Pilates and yoga are much bigger now. But we used to have a yoga studio that had like maximum 9 people in it, and we couldn't fill it. And now we have about 8 to 10 full classes a day, and we don't have enough space in Shoreditch as well as the other studios. So it just sort of shows how you have to be able to change the parameters as you grow, and how, like, when trends and stuff change. Yeah,
definitely. And so, I mean, you mentioned obviously there wasn't a lot of work-life balance to start with for the first however many years. At what point was there a real sense of, okay, I think this is going to work? And it could have been even earlier on, even when you were still having to do everything, but how long did it take to get to that place where even if financially things weren't set in stone, there's a feeling of, I think this is gonna help, or this is gonna work? Or are you still not even there?
Oh no, I think we're both like quite determined people, so we will make it work. Okay. And you know, like from the beginning, even though it was tough, don't get me wrong, but like there's always been, the demand has always been there, and the customers have always walked through the door. And so I don't think, and Joan and I genuinely believe in what we're doing. So we're doing it because we want people to move their bodies, and we want them to feel good. And we will just keep working to make sure that happens. So I don't think there's ever been a, like, you know, there's been moments where it's like, oh shit, we can't afford to, like, you know, pay our rent next month, and then we have to work out how we deal with that, and back in the old days. But there's never been really a moment when we've thought, was this the right thing to do, and is this business going to work?
Okay, fine. And so what is the plan at this stage? And maybe give a bit of context, how many, and I think you mentioned this at the start, but how many places have you got now, and what's maybe the goal over the next couple of years?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 4 studios in London at the moment. So we've got Shoreditch, which has 5 studios, and then a PT studio that's just around the corner underneath the Sweaty Betty store. Then we have Queen's Park that opened in 2012. And then we have King's Cross that we opened in 2015, in October 2015. And then Victoria that opened April 2016. And then we opened a sort of standalone yoga studio in King's Cross last September. So we've got a couple of properties that we've signed. I mean, I can't give exact things because we haven't really announced this to the press yet, but there's definitely more sites in London and then outside of London coming in the next year or so. And then, the aim is to, open a lot more sites, both like multi-studio ones and then sort of yoga studios as well. We also have recently launched the Frame Academy. So this is a training academy, and this kind of comes down to the fact that what I sort of mentioned earlier, where the instructors weren't really there. So we've spent a lot of time doing internal training at Frame to make sure our instructors are fantastic.
Yep.
And we feel genuinely passionately that the training of our industry hasn't caught up with how much better the sort of standard of classes and stuff are these days.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a disconnect. So we figured that we're in actually a really great place to actually sort of change that. So we've already held our first yoga teacher trainings, and we've got sort of our first exercise to music and reformer Pilates and pre and postnatal courses starting in the next couple of weeks. And the sort of aim with that as well is that we can build our instructors who can then teach in all of the new sites as well. But they don't have to teach at Frame sites. They'll be able to obviously teach wherever they'd like to.
And are you then, are you and Joan the ones putting together the content and for that stuff, or you've got someone else who's doing that, who's been there for so long and been trained up the way that you're happy that they are doing that?
Yeah, so we've got quite a big team now. So I think we started to pull ourselves out of the operational side of the business when we first had our children.
Okay.
Because it just wasn't sustainable anymore. I mean, we still work very long hours, but we kind of work a bit more on sort of top level strategy and planning and new business, and sort of making new stuff and exciting things happen. But we have an amazing team that works with us. So in terms of the academy, we've got a team that looks after teachers and timetable. And that team will be looking after the academy as well in terms of the operational side of that. And then we also have a team of master trainers. Okay. So each genre has a master trainer. And as you say, those people have spent a lot of time learning from Joan, from myself, from the other instructors that we have within our sort of team, of which there's about 210 of them, I think, at last count, which is quite scary. Okay. And so those guys know very much what a Frame class is like and what we're trying to get across. But some of this stuff is qualification, so it can't be too much just what Frame wants. It needs to fit to guidelines of what the people at the top are saying need to be included in those qualifications as well.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned about opening more locations, both in London and other places. Are you wanting to do that internationally? And if not, is there ways that people who are international, who are listening to this, can they do classes if they're not in the UK? Are you doing anything around online content?
Yeah, so the aim is to go international at some point. What we're trying to do, because, again, as I said, we're kind of really into growing businesses organically and sort of learning. So for us, I mean, we've had many opportunities thrown our way to go somewhere like New York or Sydney, for example. And I mean, obviously that would be amazing. And it's very tempting when those offers come in. Yeah. We're also very aware that running a business on the other side of the world is not going to be that easy. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we're nailing London, and then we're going to learn how to have studios in different cities, but that we can get there if we need to in, say, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Okay.
And then once we've nailed that, then we'll go internationally. But I think the brands can definitely do that. And I think that what we're offering is actually, even though, say, the New York fitness market is very almost oversaturated and there's so much going on, we're still getting emails from sort of ex-framers who are out there that are like, there's nothing like Frame. I think everything is very serious and intense, and there's nothing for people that just want to kind of fit exercise into their life in a sort of healthy, normal way rather than being obsessive about it.
Yeah. And I know you've talked a little bit about this in terms of why you set up Frame and your own story around fitness, but is there a real ethos that you're trying to create, or is there some change in the world that you're trying to create, or some vision that you have that Frame is trying to do around either health or fitness or that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think genuinely we are very passionate about getting people moving, and that is in all sort of levels. So Frame is our brand that talks to, your 25 to 40-year-old urban sort of go-getter. And then obviously since becoming mums, we've both realised that, say, the pre- and postnatal market isn't being spoken to. So we've sort of recently launched Mumhood as a way of trying to educate and motivate pregnant ladies and them new mums to keep exercising and the massive benefits for those people. One day I'm sure we'll do a Frame for old people, which I'll feel quite passionately about. I think it's just amazing to see people when they come in the door and you see them leaving in a better place. And I think, both of us actually, that's what makes us keep going, because we get a lot of satisfaction from seeing how you can make people feel. And for us, it's not about what you look like, it's about what you feel like. And, ultimately the two kind of do go hand in hand together. But, as long as people are happy and having a good time, then that's the most important thing. And I think when we started, it was people didn't really exercise, and definitely not people hanging out in Shoreditch. So our whole message was you can exercise. It won't kill you. It will be fun. It's a good thing to do. Yeah. Whereas now we haven't really changed where we're positioned. We're still, the way we enticed people in was that they could have a drink after class, or they could dance to Beyonce, and that kind of got them moving their bodies. Whereas now the industry has changed drastically, which is amazing, because the amount of people now that do exercise regularly has gone through the roof. But there's also become this sort of obsession with fitness and six packs and protein, and it's probably almost as unhealthy to a degree. It's just being obsessive about something different. So we kind of, I guess our message is now having to, even though we're kind of positioned in the same place, we're sort of saying actually you don't have to, that's not necessary. You can still move your body and exercise and feel great, but you can still actually you can go and have a wine, and you can not do exercise for one day because you've got other things to do with your life. It's changed around us, and we're but I think we've stayed quite on the same page as to what we believe in.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting you mentioned that, because I think there is now a lot of people who have become very obsessed with fitness. And I know there's now probably a little bit of talk against the whole wellness trend, and a lot of the people who have been at the forefront of that, and how sound is some of the advice that they're giving. Has that been a difficult thing for Frame to deal with, just in terms of okay, we don't necessarily want to be associated with this, and focusing on the branding about what you stand for?
Yeah, I think it was probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago when everything started going a bit crazy, and when the whole Instagram thing kind of really kicked off. Yeah. And we kind of chose to stick to our guns and to stay true to what we believed in, rather than following trends. And I think that's something that Frame has always been about. We've always been a bit disruptive, a bit maverick. We've always done our own thing. We're quite headstrong people, and we do have specific beliefs. And I'd like to think that most of those are based on facts, and we're always trying to learn more to understand, what the reality is. And I feel like nutrition is actually, nutrition and exercise, there's been because we've been doing this now for, over 8 years, I've seen so many kind of fads that, people are obsessed with. Like, I remember when all of my friends were doing the Dukan diet, and we basically ate cottage cheese for like 2 months of our lives. And now I think back and I'm like, that was so ridiculous. But then it was like everyone had to do this. And then it was like everyone had to eat like 20,000 dates every day because that was healthy. And then it was like, oh, actually, that's not healthy. And I think the more of these kind of trends that you see, the more that you realize that the next one is just going to be the same as well. So it all comes down to, and fitness is the same, like people get obsessed with spinning, but then they're like, actually, now I'm really bored of spinning and my body's broken because I've used the same muscles, for an hour every day of my life, and I've never stretched. So it's sort of, and that still comes back down to why we launched Frame, with the fact that you could do all different classes, because actually you should be, cross-training works. Like, if you want to be a better runner, you should be working on your strength of your glutes, and you should be stretching out your hamstrings. So you need different types of exercise to ultimately make you a better runner. But if you just genuinely want to feel, better in life, and maybe you've got a stress-busy job, working out and working really hard and doing HIIT training all the time isn't necessarily going to be the best for your body. It's probably actually gonna make you more tired and anxious and stressed. So try to get those kinds of people to start doing more restorative classes, rather than feeling like the only good type of exercise is the one where you feel like you're going to die, which definitely rings true for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned already that you and Joan are now mothers, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, Joan has 2 kids, you have 1, you've got a second on the way. How has motherhood changed things? And I know you already said that you've kind of pulled yourselves out of the business in terms of the operational and are doing more of the bigger picture stuff, but maybe even just thinking about how it's changed the direction of Frame, or how you think about the business or the marketing or any aspects just by becoming a mom and seeing that aspect of things.
That's a really good question. I think the effect of becoming a mum has had 2 things. One is it's made us work cleverer, so we have to prioritize more, and we have to delegate more. So, like, in terms of running the business, it has changed the way that we do that, and for the better, for sure, because there are lots of people out there that are much better at certain things than we are. So now we have those people doing those things. I think it puts things into perspective. So whereas in the past, some things might have really stressed us out and kept us awake at night, now ultimately if you go home and have a hug from your little 2-year-old, and that's actually what's the most important thing in life. So it kind of, although everything, Frame is our first baby and is extremely important to us, our families are number one. So they will always come first, which means that to make Frame number one as well, we just have to have that right team in place. So we've done that. And I think kind of being mothers, you want to look after people more. I think we've both, even though like this whole sort of thing of trying to get other people that come to Frame to look after their bodies and be more aware of what they need, etc., has always rung true to us. I feel like our attitude, we did definitely used to be much more, let's just like beast it and let's just go out and have fun and like, a bit more sort of gung-ho with everything. Whereas now we are a little bit more, actually, no, people need us to help them to get their lives in order kind of thing. So I feel like we're a bit more nurturing as a business and as a brand, I guess, in a way as well.
And you mentioned mumhood as being the new venture, and obviously the clue is in the name, but do you want to describe this a little bit?
Yeah, so mumhood is basically an online platform. So we have online programs for prenatal, and then a sort of phase 1 and 2 postnatal, and then a Fit Mums program. So this is online, and it links into Frame because we do our mumhood classes at Frame too, and we'll be doing those at other studios too. So not just at Frame, but other sort of great locations around the country. But the whole aim here is, again, in the same way as when we set up Frame, it was because there was nothing there, and we couldn't find what we needed. When we became pregnant, we were like confused as hell as to like, you know, we work in this industry and we still can't work out really what we should and shouldn't be doing. And the advice that is out there is all very, very cautious and aimed at the lowest common denominator, which I understand because, you know, it's difficult for the NHS or for midwives to be telling people, oh, you can still go for a run or like lift some weights or those kinds of things, where if the person they're talking to has never done that before, then they obviously shouldn't be doing that. But because we've seen through Frame the numbers of women, you know, like we have 80% women that come through our door, and most of them 25 to 40, like there's just more and more becoming pregnant and wanting to keep working out because it's so important to them as they're in part of their life these days. And the idea of stopping is like kind of really giving them anxiety. But they don't need to stop because there's so many things that they can do. And it's about educating them and trying to get the word out that what is safe, what things, and why you wouldn't do certain things. Because I think that's another thing, is that sort of lots of old wives' tales and stuff. People seem to think, you know, the reason why you wouldn't go for a run is because your baby might, you know, fall out, which is not going to happen. But, you know, like trying to educate them to the reason actually is because of the weight of your baby on your pelvis and the fact that you've got loads of relaxin in your body, so your joints are really unstable. So you're probably going to get joint pain if you do high impact exercise. And then explaining like why you would work your transverse abdominals a lot whilst pregnant to help protect your lower back, to help, again, keep your pelvis nice and stable, why your glutes don't work when you're pregnant because the way that your pelvis is moving, so why you would want to do extra work on your glutes to help keep everything nice and stable so that you don't get the pain. So there's loads of sort of, it again becomes even less about what you look like, and it becomes much more about functional fitness and actually, you know, being in a good place to keep living your life.
Yeah. And were you and Joan doing a lot of this research around to put this all together, or you found, again, you had a good team, you found people who already had this knowledge that were able to then bring it to the rest of Frame and now into mumhood?
No, so this we kind of, this is a bit of a personal passion project for us.
Okay.
So we've done most of the work, and we're in the videos. We both teach the classes at Frame. So, you know, and we've been doing that for 4 years or so, making sure, you know, and adapting them and making sure that they're like the best they can be. We've obviously spent a lot of time talking to other experts because, you know, we would be fitness experts, but we're not nutritional experts, and we're not surgeons, and we're not, you know, physios, so, and we're not midwives. So we spent a lot of time working with other experts in that field so that we can make sure that we have all the knowledge and it's all right, telling to other people that are listening to us. So, yeah, so we've sort of done our own research, gone on lots of training courses, you know, really delved into the fitness side of things, and then we've spoken a lot to other experts to make sure that we can kind of give a holistic viewpoint, because a lot of people want to know about nutrition, and, you know, it's been great talking to midwives and understanding what they get in their training, which is very little. And one of the things we're trying to do actually as part of mumhood is to sort of look at an education program for midwives, because that's actually the easiest way, we think, to talk to as many pregnant ladies as possible around the country. Okay,
cool. And it just seemed like going online for mumhood was the way to do it, in terms of just, it's more difficult to get into the studios. People could do this in their own home.
Yeah, exactly. So, like a lot of mums would struggle to get to Frame or a studio, even if it was, you know, reasonably close. So the idea is that the videos are short. They're easy to fit into your life. You can do them whilst your baby's napping or when they've gone to sleep, or if you wake up before them in the mornings. I think we're very aware, being mums, that actually it does get very difficult to fit exercise in. We own fitness studios, and I definitely exercise way less than I used to.
Yeah.
So trying to sort of overcome those barriers or stop those barriers being there in the first place was really key to this. So that's why. And little and often is very important. So even more so for, pregnancy and then postnatal rehab. So it's much better really for someone who's, had a C-section 10 weeks ago to be doing these specific exercises, for 10 minutes every day or, 5 times a week than it would be for them to come and do like an hour gym session and then go home and do nothing for a week. So it's actually it's both ease, but also really what they should be doing.
Okay.
And it's, it's a bit of a test bed as well, because we are, as you mentioned before, about Frame Online. That's something that we would like to obviously do eventually. So we are, going to be noting what works, what doesn't work, and then take those things and create our Frame Online programs as well.
Yeah. And also you and Joan seem to have been tag teaming in terms of pregnancy. So I think for the last 4 or 5 years, one or both of you have been pregnant at some point.
Yeah, which is not a business strategy and has been definitely not planned, but awesome and great for mumhood. I think you can't really talk about pregnancy exercise until it's very difficult to teach until you've been pregnant. We have one awesome teacher that breaks that mold and is an amazing pregnancy teacher. And she's not yet had a kid. I'm sure she will soon, hopefully. It's very difficult to understand how a pregnant body feels until you've been in it.
Yeah.
And I think, so I've been teaching pregnancy classes on Saturdays for the last few weeks, and I think you can really see that the customers actually really enjoy the fact that the person that's teaching them is pregnant, because they're like, if she can do that, then I can do that. Whereas if you've got someone that's super fit and has a 6-pack teaching you, it's kind of actually not that motivational when you're feeling like a whale.
Yeah. No.
So it's good. And, who knows? I told Joan the other day that she has to have twins because we haven't talked about multiple births yet. And my only worry with that is that if she has twins, I'll probably end up having twins after, because it seems to be what happens. I think we have some weird, that thing where twins, and if one person does it, the other person always feels it inside their body. We have one of those weird things going on between us.
Nice. Well, look, Pip, this has been really great chatting with you today. I think I was trying to think back before we started recording this, and I think it's been 5 years or so since we first met, and it's been really wonderful to watch the rise of Frame over that time. Before I end this, where should people be going to find out more, either about you or about any of the stuff that we've talked about today? And I'll put it all in the show notes, but you can just tell the listeners.
Yeah, cool. So if you're interested in Frame, then moveyourframe.com. is where to go. We also have lots of Chris's awesome blog posts, so you can read them there too. And mumhood is mum-hood.com. And we're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, all as those sort of same handles. And if anyone wants to get in touch or has more specific questions, then please do email us. I'm just pip@moveyourframe.com if you've got any specific questions. And it's been awesome chatting, Chris. And I think I'll talk about from the whole team at Frame as well, is that we really love your attitude and the way that you work in terms of as a nutritionist, and your really well-rounded approach. So please keep spreading the message.
Cool. Well, look, thank you for saying that. And look, it's been wonderful chatting with you today, and I really appreciate it.
Cool. Take care.
Thanks for